May 19th, 1971, on the Baikonur Steppe, a vast arid land in southern Kazakhstan, a massive Proton-K rocket stood towering on the launch pad inside. Mars 2, humanity's unmanned emissary, awaited the moment to leave Earth. As the first stage ignited and separated, and the Block D engine flared its final fire, Mars 2 quietly slipped from the embrace of its home planet, beginning a journey of nearly 55 million kilometers to a world no human had ever set foot on, Mars. Mars 2 was not alone. It was part of the Soviet Mars program, paired with Mars 3, each spacecraft carrying an orbiter module and a lander, the 4MV orbiter, tasked with observing Mars from above and relaying signals, connected Earth to a distant surface no human had yet touched. As it entered orbit, Mars 2 moved along a path of 1,380 by 24,940 kilometers, inclined at 48.9 degrees, completing a cycle every 18 hours. Near periapsis, its scientific instruments came alive, capturing images of the surface, hazy clouds, temperatures, terrain, and material composition, while monitoring the atmosphere, solar winds, and the interplanetary magnetic field. Every piece of data streamed back to Earth, a silent message: we have arrived. But on the Martian surface, history was bittersweet. Mars 2 became the first artificial object to touch Mars, yet its landing system failed. The lander fell silent, lost communication, and sank into the eternal stillness of the red planet. No sound, no signal, only evidence of a first contact with a place where no one had ever set foot. And as Mars 2 lay silent across the red desert, we are reminded that humanity's journey on Earth began in the same tentative, curious steps. The conquest of space mirrors the daring footsteps of our ancestors across distant savannas tens of thousands of years ago. The first feet to leave the vast African lands seeking new homes carried hope, fear, and the drive to explore, just as Mars 2 carried the longing to witness a distant world. Every step on the Savanna, every encounter with the unknown, was a journey beyond the limits of self, an adventure of curiosity and survival instinct. Those steps, the very first migrations, laid the foundation for all journeys that followed, from villages to cities to spacecraft carrying humans beyond the atmosphere toward other planets. We see a thread connecting past and future, a testament to an instinct that constantly pushes forward, expands boundaries, and longs to discover places where no one has ever been. So, when does the story truly begin? Between 55,000 and 70,000 years ago, on an afternoon no one remembers the shape of the sky, a small group of our ancestors stood at the edge of the East African savanna. They gazed toward the horizon as if peering beyond their own fate. At that time, they were not modern humans as we understand the term today. They were slender beings carrying one very human quality: the urge to move forward. This event is known as Out of Africa 2. But it was not the first time humans had stepped out into the world. Long before that, ancient humans had left Africa, spreading across the continents of Asia and Europe. That journey is what we call Out of Africa 1. To understand when the first migration occurred, let's go back 2 million years. In the mid-1980s, while excavating near the medieval church in Dmanisi, southern Georgia, archaeologists discovered something unexpected. Beneath the ancient layers of rock were human fossils older than anything ever found outside Africa. From 1991 until now, 5 skulls, 50 human bones, and over 15,000 stone tools have been excavated, all dated between 1.78 and 1.85 million years ago. The Dmanisi inhabitants were only about 1.5 meters tall, with brains half the size of modern humans. They crafted rudimentary Oldowan tools, similar to their African ancestors 2.5 million years earlier. But the astonishing thing wasn't how underdeveloped they were. It was how they survived, hunted, settled, and adapted to the harsh climate of the Caucasus. With such small bodies, how did they endure the harsh conditions and even travel tens of thousands of miles, paving the way across the continents of Asia and Europe? The answer lies in a profoundly human discovery, a skull of an elderly individual who had lost all their teeth. The jaw had healed, showing that this person was cared for by the community for many years. Almost 2 million years ago, empathy and social care already existed. Perhaps it was this mutual support, more than tools or intellect, that allowed them to go far. The Dmanisi inhabitants may have been ancient Homo erectus or Homo georgicus, but the name is not the point. The key evidence is this: even small humans with simple brains could leave Africa, adapt, and survive together. However, Dmanisi was not the first place. In Jordan, Oldowan-style tools dating back around 2.48 million years suggest that the earliest Homo habilis may have reached the Middle East. And in the Siwalik Hills of India, animal bones with cut marks, dating up to 2.58 million years old, may represent the earliest traces of humans outside Africa. So, what exactly was out of Africa 1? Perhaps it is the story of small humans with modest brains, armed only with rudimentary stone tools, yet daring to leave their homeland, adapt to harsh climates, hunt unfamiliar animals, and survive in Georgia, China, India, Indonesia. They did not just pave the way for humanity, they birthed the human spirit. The most moving symbol is the toothless skull at Dmanisi, proof that care and compassion existed from the very beginning. 2 million years later, their descendants, us, once again, left Africa during Out of Africa 2, encountering ancient cousins like Homo floresiensis. On a tiny Indonesian island, 2 human branches separated for millions of years, now reunited. It is a poetic moment, a testament to the tangled, wild, and wondrous journey of human evolution. Imagine this: you're living in a familiar home where sunlight slips through the window in a steady rhythm, where the wind brushing through the branches sounds like a gentle lullaby. Everything feels right, safe. So why would you ever leave? Why did our ancestors, those small, fragile humans from millions of years ago, leave the land that had nurtured them? What pushed them into the unknown? To this day, science is still debating. There was no single reason, but a convergence of many push and pull forces, like waves that both knock you back and call you forward. Some researchers believe climate change was the first spark. The cycles of ice ages, warming, then freezing again, made the African savanna expand and contract like the breath of a giant. In some periods, the rains vanished for years, leaving behind cracked earth like the aging skin of a weary world. Water disappeared. Herds moved farther than ever. A group of people could wake up one morning and realize the entire landscape had changed color under the harshness of the sky. Have you ever wondered, when water, the most essential thing, becomes only a memory, do you stay or do you go? But climate was only part of the story. Population increases, modest by today's standards, may have pushed food supplies to their limits. Fire was used more often, tools grew sharper, humans hunted more efficiently, and eventually they began competing with each other for hunting grounds, for water sources, for the blooming meadows after the rains. Perhaps other human groups, still sparse across the continent, unintentionally pushed one another to the edge. And then there's the idea that exploration itself was fundamental. We, Homo sapiens, may carry a gene or some neurological trait that simply won't let us sit still. A cognitive spark that lets us imagine new horizons. A quiet restlessness that insists we must keep moving. Dangerous, perhaps, but also the very trait that made us who we are. Have you ever felt that even when life is safe, even when everything is familiar, there's a tiny voice whispering, "Are we really fine? There's more out there farther. Keep going." Maybe our ancestors heard that same voice. If you lived back then, would you have the courage to leave the only land you had ever known? Or would you stay, clinging to a safety as fragile as smoke, in a world where safety was never guaranteed? Perhaps the people who stood at the edge of that savanna long ago left us an invisible inheritance, the impulse to seek, the refusal to be satisfied with staying still. Migration is not just the act of leaving. It's the search for survival, the search for a future, and sometimes the search for ourselves. And so, their story has never been an old story. It lives on in every flight that takes off, every ship that crosses an ocean, every dream humanity sends into the night sky. What about you? If you found yourself standing before a brand new horizon, would you stop? Or would you take the next step? Not with sturdy boots, not with maps, food supplies, or any kind of guarantee. Just with bare feet, a few crude stone tools, and a fragile belief that somewhere ahead, life might still exist. In that vast landscape, a small band of beings, the earliest ancestors of ours, prepared for what was likely the boldest decision of their lives, stepping out into the world. To understand that courage, we have to remember that their world was nothing like ours. Every day was a trial, a gamble against nature, no hospitals, no technology, no solid roofs. And yet, in the harshest corners of the natural world, humans learned the most important lessons: how to adapt, how to endure, and how to hope. They didn't leave because of ambition. They left because survival demanded it. When the climate shifted, when herds migrated farther away, when water sources dwindled and the wind carried dry, burning dust, humans were forced to face a question we still ask ourselves today: stay and slowly die, or walk forward into the unknown? A simple question, but merciless, and they, beings just 1.5 meters tall, with brains half the size of ours, chose the harder answer. They stepped onto the road. What could possibly make them brave enough to do that? Maybe it was survival instinct. Maybe a spark of curiosity, a trait that, millions of years later, still lives inside every modern human, the desire to explore what we do not yet know. But behind it all, there seemed to be something else, an extraordinary capacity to adapt. When the winds grew bitter cold, they learned to make fire. When food became scarce, they learned to craft new tools. When the land dried up, they followed the herds, the rainy seasons, the unpredictable rivers. One individual was small, but a community was strong. They lived in groups, shared food, protected one another from predators, and, as the toothless skull from Dmanisi shows, they cared for the weak. In a world where life itself was the harshest teacher, compassion became humanity's first bright flame. Strangely enough, It was their fragility that made them strong. It was their scarcity that made them inventive. It was their fear that made them unite. And that is the true nature of adaptation, not merely changing form, but changing the way we live, the way we think, the way we care for one another. If we look at modern life, we can see a deep connection. We no longer face lions or freezing nights, but we face fears with different shapes. Pressure, loneliness, failure, the sudden shocks of life. And sometimes the same question our ancestors faced appears in our own minds. Do I move forward or do I stop? But maybe we forget something. Moving forward is a trait written into our DNA. From the very moment our ancestors stood at the threshold of the world, we were born from those who refused to give up. Every drop of blood in us carries the result of millions of years of confronting adversity. Our ancestors walked through darkness, not knowing what lay beyond the next hill. And we, even with lights, maps, Wi-Fi, and information, sometimes fear change more than they did. That is one of the great paradoxes of the modern world. But that is exactly why their story matters, to remind us that adaptation is not the privilege of the past, but the inheritance of the present. Look at the small footsteps that crossed Dmanisi, Jordan, India, China, Indonesia, not because of strength, not because of superior intelligence, but because they dared to face life. Perhaps in that moment when they stood at the edge of the Savanna, preparing to leave their African homeland, they too were afraid. They too were uncertain. They too wanted to turn back to what felt familiar. But even so, they stepped forward, one step, then another. And so, a journey of tens of thousands of miles began with trembling feet. Today, we board a plane and reach another country in a few hours. But their journey lasted hundreds of generations. Nights without a moon, days without water, predators lurking in the dark, children born and raised along the way. Yet they kept going, because to live is to move forward from them. We learn this. Adaptation has never been easy, but stopping has never been the better choice. And whenever modern life exhausts us, whenever we think we can't handle one more problem, we must remember that we carry the legacy of people who crossed an entire world with nothing but feet and willpower. We are the descendants of those who dared to walk, dared to hurt, dared to lose, dared to hope. And so, amid all the challenges of life, sometimes we just need to pause, take a deep breath, and ask ourselves, if they could do it in a world that wild, why can't we? And now, millions of years after that very first journey, we find ourselves facing the same question. Is there anywhere beyond Earth meant for our children? The Earth is exhausted. Rivers are drying. Forests have shrunk into mere shadows of memory. The climate is shifting faster than any ancient tribe could have ever imagined. We, creatures both intelligent and fragile, are looking at our home the way our ancestors once looked at the drying plains of East Africa, as a shelter becoming tight and breathless. And just like them, that fear pushes us to keep moving. But what makes humans extraordinary has never been strength or dexterity. What makes us human is our ability to walk forward, even when fear is the only thing we can see. Long ago, when sandstorms struck their faces and predators whispered in the dark, our ancestors still walked. And today, when the climate turns violent and the planet trembles under our own extraction, we too are walking. But this time, into the cosmos, with spacecraft, with rocket engines, with laboratories and minds bold enough to look at the sky and ask, why not? The modern world has its own footprints. markers that lead humanity from Africa to the heavens. Sputnik echoing from orbit. Yuri Gagarin murmuring, "I see Earth," from the void Voyager, drifting like a message in a bottle, carrying the story of humanity into an endless ocean. But if all of those were just the overture, then the true symphony began on July 20th, 1969, the day Apollo 11 touched down on the moon. Imagine it. Only decades earlier, humans were still struggling with heavy airplanes. And yet now, a rocket as tall as a skyscraper, Saturn V, tore through the sky and carried 3 humans away from their home star, toward a place that had existed only in myth. When Neil Armstrong stepped down the ladder and fine ash-like dust rose beneath his boot, the entire Earth fell silent. Signals trembled across 238,000 miles, pulsing like the heartbeat of all humankind. Then came the words, simple, yet filled with the soul of our entire evolutionary journey. One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. That moment didn't just leave footprints on the moon. It carved into the human spirit a belief. If we can walk on the moon, we can reach other worlds. And so, our gaze pushed farther. Space telescopes like James Webb let us see ancient galaxies, as if witnessing the childhood of the universe. The TRAPPIST-1 system appeared like an invitation. Planets E, F, G resting in the habitable zone, Earth-sized, perhaps cradling liquid water. Proxima B, close enough to feel like a neighbor across a cosmic ocean. Kepler 452b, Earth's distant cousin orbiting a sun-like star. LHS 1140b, a giant ocean world waiting for us to understand it. Each planet is a test of hope, but every hope comes with warnings. Radiation from red dwarfs, atmospheres stripped away, worlds locked with one side in endless fire and the other in eternal ice, beautiful, promising, yet still locked behind doors we cannot open. And then, among the stars, there is one red planet, near, cold, and strangely familiar, Mars. Since the late 20th century, humanity has sent dozens of probes to Mars, unlocking an unprecedented well of knowledge about the red planet. But the journey there has never been easy. Nearly 2/3 of all missions to Mars have failed, with many spacecraft disappearing before they even touched its thin atmosphere. And yet, there have been miracles that rewrote history, like the Spirit and Opportunity rovers. Machines that were supposed to last only 90 days, yet Opportunity survived for nearly 15 years on that harsh, dusty world. By 2016, 2 rovers and 6 orbiters were still tirelessly sending back data to Earth, revealing Mars's geology, its ice, its atmosphere, and the traces of ancient rivers. And although not a single sample of Martian soil or rock has been successfully returned home, NASA has set its sights on something even more profound: the search for signs of ancient microbial life, for organic molecules that may have been preserved in long-dried lake beds and river deltas billions of years old. Mars does not promise comfort. It is cold. It is dry. Its dust storms can swallow continents. Its gravity is so weak that our bodies would change after just a few years. Its atmosphere is thin, filled with CO2, too fragile to shield or warm us. The first people who go there may never return. They will live beneath domes, grow food under artificial light, recycle every drop of water and every breath of air. They will face a loneliness not of individuals, but of an entire civilization living far from home. And yet, why do we still reach for Mars? Because Mars feels like an older, sterner sibling, harsh, but close enough to touch. And in its silence, we hear something familiar, the ancient call of human migration. Just as our ancestors left East Africa in search of water, just as they crossed savannas and deserts, facing predators and death. Today, we do the same, only our desert is red. Do you see it? The desire to reach Mars, or to go even farther to distant exoplanets, is not truly a story of science. It is a story of survival, a living echo of those small, fragile humans in Dmanisi, in Olduvai, at every crossroads where our species once walked to escape extinction. They walked because life demanded it. And now, so do we. One day, children born on another world may talk about us the way we talk about our ancestors, as the ones who left the blue cradle behind when Earth could no longer hold us. Perhaps they will stand beneath a crimson sky and wonder, were they afraid? And what made them dare to go so far? The answer is the same as it was at the beginning, because humans, in every age, always walk forward, even when that path leads us away from the very planet that gave us life.